Good morning, everybody. This is not a King's press conference, let me just say. I'm Darrell Steinberg, President of the Senate, and I am the proud author of Senate Bill 666 and Senate Bill 516. And we are here today to tell the press and the public a little bit about why these measures are so important. Congress, ever so slowly, finally appears ready to act on federal immigration reform. And in California, of course, we are well ahead of the curve. This month, April 2013, marks the 20th anniversary of the passing of Cesar Chavez. And every year we celebrate and commemorate his birthday. But as others have said, not my original saying, that the day of celebration needs to be a day on, not a day off. And that our work needs to always be about continuing his legacy, not just celebrating his past achievements. And certainly, while we have made great progress when it comes to the rights of immigrants in California, there is still a long way to go. Now, when it comes to documented workers, we have many laws on the books. Most employers are covered by our labor laws, regardless of their status. While many employers and contractors behave ethically, others do not. Some employers continue to use immigration status as blackmail, to force workers into debt bondage, to ignore basic workplace safety, to sexually harass employees, and to inhibit coworkers from reporting the sexual harassment or mistreatment of other workers, or to hold back wages. And by the way, law-abiding businesses are competing with the lawbreakers, whose costs are lowered by engaging in illegal activities like wage thefts and shortcuts in worker safety. You're going to hear firsthand from victims and their advocates about the ongoing plight of immigrant workers in California who attempt to exercise their employment rights only to have their employer threaten to report them or their family members to immigration officials. Senate Bill 666 puts in statute that it is illegal to report or threaten to report immigration status because a worker attempted to exercise their workplace rights under the law. Plain and simple. You can't use immigration status to blackmail workers. But you will also hear firsthand from victims of a related but distinct issue. This is the issue of foreign labor contractors who sometimes misuse visa programs to exploit immigrant workers with exorbitant service fees, forcing workers into debt bondage, and deceiving them about the terms and the conditions of their promised employment. Senate Bill 516 demands stricter regulations of foreign labor contractors so that the worker who comes to this country has written terms and conditions of employment, so that the contract and the contractor is registered with the California Labor Commissioner, and so they have the authority to root out those who are exploiting and abusing workers. This package of bills, these two bills, are moving their way through the Senate. They are before the Senate Judiciary Committee today, and they, again, in a distinct fashion, but in related ways, address a very compelling issue. Working people ought to have the right to be treated with respect and dignity. California's immigrant workers make a valuable contribution to our economy and the American dream. If we're going to be serious about immigration reform in this country and hopefully establish a path to citizenship for people who are currently undocumented, it begins by treating those people and all people with respect in the workplace. I want to introduce just a few of the workers and their advocates who can tell the story much better than I can. First, Angela, an immigrant worker to California from the Philippines, and Stephanie Richard, who's counsel at the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, to talk about SB 516. SB 516 again is the bill that demands stricter regulation of foreign labor contractors. Please come on up and share your thoughts.
Good morning. My name is Angela. I'm enslaved for 2.5 years, and I'm a survivor of human trafficking. I came here to the United States with a lawful visa and a promise to have a good job. In the Philippines, coming to the United States is like winning a lottery, so I was so excited to come. I didn't ask a lot of questions. I traveled to the United States with other 10 workers. When I get in the United States, things were very different than I thought, because they told me that I owed $12,000 and I have to work for 10 years in order to pay that debt. And I was forced to work in elderly care in retirement home here in suburb in Los Angeles. I work for 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. We sleep in the floors, in the hallways. We eat table scraps. Even though we're sick, we have to work. Me and my coworker were threatened that if we try to escape, we were gonna be deported by calling the police and telling the police that we stole something from her. So this went for 2.5 years. And eventually I was rescued by the FBI through the neighbor noticed that I didn't get a day off. So I spoke to the FBI about what happened, and I testified against my trafficker and in a criminal court, so she got a 5-year sentence in prison. Now I'm a certified nursing assistant working full-time and a member of CAS Survivor Advisory Caucus. It's a group of survivors that learning leadership and advocacy skills to raise awareness and influence policies to help and protect survivors of human trafficking. I know a lot, because of the caucus, I know a lot of workers that happened to them what happened to me. I know some that came with an H-2B visa, and they came with the promise to have a good job, but then when they came here, they were forced to work in a hotel with the threats of police, and some, they have H-2A visa that's supposed to be work in an agriculture, but then they end up slaving, working in a farm all over the United States with a guard watching them with armed guard. Workers like us, we need more protection and information. So with these bills, they could protect us, and for like us that in case we take the opportunity, we know a lot about what's gonna happen here, or we are more protected. So, but we are very thankful with Senator Steinberg that he helped us and supporting us.
Thank you. Go ahead briefly.
So my name is Stephanie Richard. I'm the Policy and Legal Services Director at the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, otherwise known as CAST. CAST is one of the largest legal services provider and comprehensive service provider in the country for victims of modern-day slavery. Here in the United States, our clients come from 54 countries around the world. They are men, women, and children who are forced to work against their will in either commercial sex or forced labor. So unfortunately, Angela's story is too familiar to those of us who work at CAST. Today, in 2013, a slave may not be in chains and chains or shackles, but they are no freer. Slavery is not simply ownership of one person or another, but involves coercion. In today's global economy, workers can be enslaved by threats of deportation, lack of viable options, and especially debt. CAS clients, in our experience, have paid between $2,000 to $20,000 for lawful visas to come to the United States. This is because they believe in the promise of the opportunity given them. They take out loans from loan sharks at exorbitant rates. They mortgage their family homes. They borrow from everyone they know to do this. And therefore, they end up in debt to these foreign labor recruiters who have made false promises. Once they get here, they're threatened with grave abuses. Some are threatened with armed guards. Some, we've had threats made against workers who say if they escape, they're going to call the police, and then they'll post a wanted poster of that person and say, oh yes, we had them arrested, and if you escape, this is what's going to happen to you. We've also seen things such as like Angela, and I don't think she said this, but she was told when she got here she had to work for 10 years to pay off her debt of $12,000. And so workers who feel like it's a lawful debt, right, are enslaved because of these practices. So for this reason, CAST stands with Senator Steinberg today to support SB 516. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you to Angela. You know, for me, it's just worth noting that when you think about what a human being like Angela has been through in her life, to have the courage to come before a bunch of cameras and speak publicly about her experience is really amazing and inspiring, and has undoubtedly helped many people and will continue to do so, and thank you. Next, we want you to hear a little bit about the other bill, which is the bill that prohibits using immigration status as a retaliatory tool by an employer in the workplace. I want to welcome Antonio Martinez, a farm worker in the Salinas Valley, and Michael Marsh, the directing attorney for the California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation. Please both come on up, okay? I'm going to ask everyone to be a little brief, but what happens out there? Welcome.
I'm going to translate. He's going to speak Spanish.
Here we go.
Antonio Martínez. Buenos días a todos. Yo me llamo Antonio Martínez. Vengo de Greenfield, California.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Antonio. I am from Antonio Martinez. I am from Greenfield. I was speaking Triqui. That's my native language.
Por el momento que estamos aquí es por estar por el apoyo y queremos que por favor que pase esa ley y es bien para nosotros.
We're here to support the bill. Please pass this bill. It's very important for us.
Y a la vez de eso, si pasa esa ley, nosotros vamos a estar contentos.
If you pass this bill, we're going to be very happy.
Y ya ahorita señor Senado los tiene y a ver que aprueben esa ley.
Thank you to Senator Steinberg.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Marsh, please.
Hi, my name is Michael Marsh. While I was here last week speaking at the Committee on Labor and Industrial Relations, and while I was here, my staff was interviewing a woman who was sexually assaulted by her supervisor after work, at the workplace. And when she made a complaint of it, she was told that she would be deported and her family would be deported if she took her claim any further. That was just 1 week ago. There are many, many good employers in the state of California, and I've dealt with many of them. But unfortunately, there are also employers who don't follow the laws. And one of the saddest things for me to see as a legal advocate, as somebody who went to law school and learned Spanish in order to help Spanish-speaking immigrants, is when you see great laws on the books, but not enough is done at the local level to protect workers because they're afraid to make those initial complaints. There's people every day who come into our office with valid claims, with valid complaints. Their rights have been violated, and yet they're afraid, even once they get the information and they're told that, yes, they had a legal right to do what they were doing, to insist on not being sexually harassed at work, or to expect the pay that they were promised, or expect rest or meal periods or health and safety protections. Even when they're told that they had these protections, they don't want to pursue their claims because they fear deportation, either of themselves or of a family member. So this is a persistent problem, and I think that it's something that really needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, retaliation is one of the most difficult and problematic forms of workplace discrimination and mistreatment, because it compounds the underlying act. The underlying act, it may be a wage violation, it may be lack of worker safety, but then it is compounded when a working person wants to file a complaint or speak up not even a formal complaint, but wants to speak up and is dissuaded from doing so because they fear that they are going to be deported. And that's what this bill seeks to prevent. Let me now introduce Anker, a university researcher from the Netherlands, who will talk very briefly again about the experience of high-skilled, high-wage immigrants being exploited by some California employers. Okay, thank you. Welcome to you.
Yes, my name is Anke, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at UC Davis, and I'm here on a J1 visa. And my union, UAW 5810, represents over 6,000 postdoctoral researchers at the University of California. And postdoc researchers already have their PhDs, and they come to the UC to do breakthrough research. Think about green energy technologies or stem cell research. And the majority of us are in the US on guest worker visa, like me. And we have recently unionized and we bargained our first contract, and with that we won many rights and many gains. And although unionization and collective bargaining formally provide both guest and US workers the same rights on the work floor, under the current system, guest workers are vulnerable to greater discrimination and exploitation by their employer. And almost all postdoc guest workers are here on a J1 or an H1B visa, which are both linked to a specific employer. This means that you can only work at the mercy of this one employer while you're on your visa. And this creates a structural insecurity for a guest worker. There is always this big club over your head that is like a threat of not only being fired, but also being deported as a result of being fired, because your visa is controlled by your one employer. And you can even be deported before you can use your contractual due process rights. And this fear makes you think twice about standing up for your rights and addressing, for example, safety issues at the workplace or discrimination. And the most widespread case of retaliation against guest worker postdocs is UC's denial of health benefits to some international postdocs, health benefits to which they are entitled under a contract. And since guest worker visa often require health insurance to enter the country, some have been forced to pay up to $1,200 out of pocket a month for health insurance, while everyone else only pays $40. And some are covering small children or pregnant spouses, and they are all being put in an unfair, dangerous, and extremely difficult position by the UC. And this is just an example of how a broken immigration system impedes the abilities of guest worker postdocs to exercise their rights under a union contract and the law. And as you can see, being a guest is not always much of an honor. And we look forward to an improved guest worker system that removes visa under employer control and includes stronger protections against retaliation. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay. Be happy to answer a few of your questions. Or I'm sure any of the people who've come forward here be happy to answer any of your questions. Jim.
What would the enforcement mechanism be? Who would bring?
Well, under the bill, the retaliation bill, it would be a civil cause of action. That would be the appropriate way to vindicate rights that have been violated. You know, I would know it's interesting in the first committee, the Senate Labor Committee, that the bill received bipartisan support. Senator Mark Weiland voted for the bill. I just, that was noteworthy to me. We don't usually. Okay.
I have a question for the gentleman that just spoke over here.
Yep.
Disculpe, le quería hacer una pregunta. ¿Usted ha recibido abuso por un contratista o qué es lo que le pasó? ¿Nos puede
Come on, right.
contar un poquito más acerca de su historia?
Sí, claro, todos como así los trabajadores del campo, agrícolas, todos casi nosotros hemos recibido maltrato de los patrones, contratistas, mayordomos.
So there was a question that was asked about, have you, been subjected to abuses? And he said, yeah, I have, and most farm workers have been subjected to abuses from employers and bosses.
¿Y nos puede dar un ejemplo de qué tipo de maltrato ha recibido usted?
Can you give us an example of what type of treatment?
Sí, el maltrato que nos hacen con nosotros es de que hay veces que uno quiere decir cosas, nuestros derechos y todo eso, y ellos buscan una excusa para sacarnos del trabajo.
Sometimes we're trying to exercise a right and they figure out an excuse to kick us out of our job.
¿Y trabaja para alguna compañía actualmente o son diferentes personas?
Sí, una compañía según que se llama Green Valley Harvesting.
Right now he works for a company called Green Valley.
¿Y está, dónde está la compañía?
Está en la ciudad de Salinas.
It's in the city of Salinas.
Okay. You may, I'm sure RG'd be willing to translate for anybody after the formal part of this too, to ask any more questions about their individual experiences. Sometimes it's hard in front of the mic to detail a lot of this.
Existing, I guess, reporting or licensing requirements for foreign labor contractors?
There is no licensing requirement with the California Department of Industrial Relations or the Labor Commissioner. There are some requirements under the existing law that require the employers to provide a written, correct? I believe. Go ahead, please, go.
So in California right now, there's an extensive system for farm labor recruiters, but not for foreign labor contractors. And actually, this would make California very cutting edge. This is the first bill of its kind across the country. However, we really feel like this is one of the largest ways we can prevent modern day slavery in our own backyard. So we can't do anything at the state level to fix our broken temporary worker visa program, but what we can do is make sure that workers are not exploited and made false promises about their employment so they end up being vulnerable to modern day slavery. And that's what SB 516 does in creating this very comprehensive three-tier structure for giving disclosure to workers and telling them they cannot pay fees, and then having a provision that makes that you have to register so that employers and potential employees can know who's legitimate, and then having an accountability factor, which is a private right of action, as well as a bond.
Are these contract laborers who are based in California?
So they can either be based in California, or what we really see is foreign labor contractors who are operating abroad. And so the bill has a provision that if you have to have someone that you could have service of process here, because what we're seeing is that enforceability against foreign labor contractors, because there are laws in the books we could enforce against them, are impossible under our current system.
Are you only helping undocumented workers? Or are you also helping documented workers with your bills?
Well, both. Foreign labor contractors have the legal visa and the legal right and ability to work in this country, but they need more protection. At the same time, we are protecting undocumented workers as well, who under what we hope will be federal immigration reform will soon have a path to legal residency and citizenship. And those hardworking people who pay taxes and who contribute to our society and are trying to get their legal status, we want to ensure that they aren't victims of workplace mistreatment, and that they have a full right to complain to the authorities when they see somebody else being mistreated. That's what our bill is about. Our two bills are about.
So just, from our perspective, working with farm workers, the line between documented and undocumented isn't near as clear as it is when we sit here in cities and talk about it. And part of the problem is every documented worker probably has somebody who's undocumented in their family, and every undocumented worker probably has somebody who's documented in their family. And when the employers do verify or retaliate by calling the Homeland Security, lots of time the database is inaccurate. There's been many, many press reports about that. So it's not always clear certain people are documented and certain people are undocumented. And it's the state policy to protect all employees equally regardless of immigration status, because if not, it's a race. It's a race to hell. It's a race down the hill to the lowest common denominator, and there will always be some employers who take advantage of others.
These bills, the best laws prevent the very actions the law is trying to prohibit. These bills should send a message, and hopefully will act as a deterrent to those who engage in these kinds of practices. That's the point here. Yeah.
How are these bills different from the ones that are going through the assembly? How are they different, or how do they complement the ones that, for example, Roger Hernandez is passing through the assembly?
I'm still reviewing those bills. I can't give you a definitive answer. I think they're similar. They're on the same, that they try to address the same general problem. I think, again, I have two bills here. One deals specifically with foreign labor contractors. I think Mr. Hernandez's bill mostly is around trying to fix the labor code and the law around retaliation. Both bills are important to me, and both are part of my package. But, we'll work with the assemblyman and the assembly when the bills get over to the other houses. We always do.
Senator Steinberg.
Yeah.
I don't think, basically, I just checked our budget for 516 has any opposition. I did see that the chamber had expressed some opposition to 666.
They've removed their opposition, I believe. Yes. So, this is...
Maybe you respond to what they had said previously.
They had some... Well, here was the concern on 666. The concern was, are we doing anything that would prevent employers from following federal immigration law? And the answer is no. Now, there was nothing under our bills that would prevent, until we get immigration reform, from employer from reporting the immigration status to the authorities, okay? What we prohibit is the timing of such a report. In other words, you can't report to the immigration authorities after a worker has complained about an unsafe work condition or sexual harassment or any of the other workplace violations or laws of discrimination. And in other words, employer, if you weren't going to report somebody prior to their filing a complaint, you can't report them after they make the complaint. That was the distinction that the chamber wanted to ensure that we were clear on, and we are very clear. Thank you very much. Okay, I've got to go. Thank you.